Dave, I had my colonoscopy on Friday.
Oh, what a start or what an end, I guess. I don't know.
By God, I'm going to talk about it. Because part of it is, of course, nobody wants to go in for a colonoscopy or a colonoscopy. I've been calling it colonoscopy because it sounds a little bit more continental. Nobody wants to go in for a colonoscopy because, of course, they're nervous about the procedure. I am here to tell you the first two things I want to tell you are perfectly serious, and then I'll tell you the not so serious part. It was easier than going to the dentist. The actual procedure itself was easier than going to the dentist. I got there at 1:30. I think I was out by 4, and I was asleep for most of it. Very restful sleep.
Wait, they put you out?
They put you out. You are wonk gone. I think they use propofol. Yeah.
Why did I for some reason I thought you were stayed conscious. All right.
Before they did, but now because they also now, instead of just looking around, they've got a special tool where if they see something like a polyp, they can take it out right away.
I see.
Instead of making you go through 2 trips.
Right, because now they have the miniature laser and the miniature grabber and all that sort of built in, right? Yeah.
So, so they just take care of it. It's easy, and it used to be they said
so
that.
So, Brad, would you say you're in and out in terms of colonoscopies?
Yes, I would. I would say I was in and out, Dave. And I will say that they used to say you should get your colonoscopy by 50. They're now saying about 45 because they're actually catching things younger and younger. And the whole name of the game is to catch it early. When they catch something going on early, it's very treatable. What you don't want to do is put it off and find out that, you let the clock run.
Yeah.
So I know you're much younger than I am. However, I know you're past,
we should let people know at home much younger.
But
decades younger.
I know you're past 45, so I want to hear that Dave Kellett is scheduling his soon. It's nothing to be afraid of, okay? But I will say this, being honest, the actual procedure, not anything to be worried about. The day before the procedure is a drudgery because first you've got to kind of limit your fiber and stuff for a week before. And then the day before, you can only have broth and clear fluids and stuff like that.
Yeah,
because you got to clear out. And of course, the part that everybody looks forward to, you take what can only be described as a metric shit ton of laxatives before, and then you spend a lot of time in the bathroom, right? So my wife was in charge of all of this stuff. She loves researching, and so she found out the best way to mix the laxatives with Gatorade and everything. She comes up when we're about to start this with 3 Dulcolax tablets in a silver covered dish, right, like a butler. She opens the dish with a flourish and she says, "Your dinner is served." And here's 4 tablets. So I take the tablets and I start with the laxative immersed in Gatorade. And a little bit later, nature is calling. So I go into the bathroom, right? And don't worry, if you're getting worried.
How far into this story are we going to get?
You're not going to get any details. You're not going to get any details. But I got to tell you about what happened in the bathroom. I go into the bathroom, I shut the door, and I turn around, and my wife has posted 8, 9, or 10 little printout encouragements that she's taped to the inside of the bathroom door. Like one of them was just a poop emoji saying, "You can do it." And one of them was a little cartoon toilet saying, "Go, go, go." And all of these are posted all around the inside of the bathroom that she'd printed out on our laser printer with little encouragements for the time that I'm going to be spending in there. So I'm cracking up, right? So I sit down, and all of a sudden...
What's great, by the way, can I pause you for a second? What's great about a long-term happy marriage is those moments like this where it's also a tiny bit of schadenfreude, where it's like, yes, I'm taking care of my husband, but also I'm enjoying the fact that he's got to spend the next 8 hours doing this.
There was a lot of that. It was evenly matched between taking care of and taking care of.
And delighting in the fact that you are having to go through this,
So then I no sooner sit down, my phone goes off, and I open it up, and it's a text from my wife. It says...
From out the hallway.
Yeah, and it says, "Check out my colonoscopy prep song playlist on Spotify." And she made an entire playlist of songs to listen to while you're prepping for your colonoscopy, including classics like Ring of Fire, Backdoor Men by the Doors, The Long and Winding Road by the Beatles, of course, classics like Little Brown Jug from Glenn Miller, Hurt So Good from John Mellencamp. Just lots of
I can think of like Moving Right Along from the Muppets, all the
I Like to Move It from Madagascar 5. Just A Bad Moon Rising, of course, Creedence Clearwater Revival.
A Bad Moon Rising, that's great.
And of course, batting in the final spot, that Van Morrison classic Brown Eyed Girl. So I had an entire playlist. Now I was told that I should have been happy that Cooler Heads prevailed because my son wanted to hide a Bluetooth speaker in the bathroom, and then when I was in the midst of it, he would play applause and cheering from audiences. But they all decided that would have been going too far. So I made it through the day, went in and got it done, and they found one little polyp. They took it out. And Dave, you get pictures of your colon.
I don't want any of that. No, thank you.
You're a very sciencey guy. You don't want it. This is a side of me I've never seen before. It's really cool. It's like, oh wow, that's going on.
Because I had to have kidney surgery a long time ago, and I actually asked to see the laparoscopic. I wanted to see it. So yes, you're not wrong. It is kind of cool to see.
So if you're getting up there towards your 40s, I want you to know from firsthand source, I've gone through it. It's very easy to go through. Like I said, I find it more difficult to sit in a dentist chair than to be knocked out and wake up later and have a cookie and go home. So I want you to do it. I want you to get your colonoscopy. It's good to catch this stuff early, so get it done.
I mean, you're not wrong in the sense that next year I turn 50, and I've been trying to sort of the equivalent of getting my affairs in order before I turn 50. I've really been trying to be like, because everybody says like, hey, it's harder to lose weight when you get in your 50s. Hey, it's harder to get back into shape so I'm trying to I've really been spending my 49th year trying to get back on the health train after the pandemic. And so you're not wrong that I need to schedule this. But God, I just got to tell you, I love the fact that your family. That sounds like my family. That's exactly how we would deal with it. The idea that someone would set up a Bluetooth speaker and when you walk in the bathroom, they're playing ole, 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 ole as you walk in.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Let's get ready to rumble. Ring of Fire, by the way, just chef's kiss. That's the best choice of all of them.
First one out of the gate, yeah.
Oh my God. On that great note and on that public service, Brad, thank you for that. I'm going to say hello, everybody. Welcome to ComicLab, the show ostensibly about making comics.
And about making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. A reminder, this show is going out live to our Comic Lab friends over at the Live Gab group over at patreon.com/comiclab. You could be watching this show live with us every week as it streams, and there is a concurrent chat running off to the side there where we answer questions before, during, and after the show. And if you happen to miss that live stream show, it is taped every week, so you can watch the stream later after Life, Love, or Learning. And Bradley J. Geiger, I've got the first topic for the show coming in hot for this week because I am in the midst of one of the more uncomfortable bits of writer's block I have had in the last couple of years.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about that.
I'm very much in the thick of it, and I am not enjoying it. And I know that we've talked about this in the past, and I thought it would be good because we talked about it from your perspective a couple of years ago, and that seemed to be helpful to a lot of people to hear that a cartoonist that they listened to was going through it. And I thought it would be worthwhile to revisit it now again because it's good for everyone just to know that you're not alone in that. But also, we can talk about our strategies because right now I am flailing. I'm at that stage where my normal strategies are not working. You know what I mean? The things that I normally would do. Yeah. And so what I'm thinking that this writer's block is coming from is frankly a lack of confidence
Yes.
And I don't know what triggered this. I don't know. I don't know what's causing the lack of confidence, but that's what the writer's block feels like it's coming from.
Yeah.
Where I know I'm still having ideas. I have ideas that I'm writing down or emailing myself or texting myself later. But every time I look at them again later, I'm like, nah, is that worth spending 2 hours, 5 hours on? I don't know if this is a good enough idea.
Yeah.
And so I'm not taking action on any ideas.
Right.
First of all, does this ring any bells with you as far as it being a lack of confidence?
I've often said that writer's block is not a lack of ideas; it's a lack of confidence. And I've been kind of so when I get writer's block, the first thing I try to fix is inertia. Right? I try to get and I guess it's kind of a theme of the show today. I try to get things moving again, Dave. I try to get the flow going. And by the way, I mean, I don't want to sit here and play armchair psychologist with you, but you are going through a lot of changes right now in your professional life. Your assistant is going to be going on maternity leave next month. That's going to cause a big change in how you've worked for years and years and years.
6 years now. Yeah.
We just had a close call with the bank that Patreon and Kickstarter and almost everybody else in Silicon Valley uses. So that had us all staring in the mirror, doing a little bit of reckoning. And even though it's over, it's never over, right? Because it's like, well, okay, when's the next shoe going to drop? So you've had a lot of things that could impact your confidence. And also, even if take all those things off the table, it's good for people to know that here's a person that's been doing this for well over 20 years at the professional level, who's made his living at doing this for a long time, right? 20-year career in comics plus, and still gets writer's block, right? This isn't something that goes away. It isn't a shortcoming of anybody's. This is a natural part of the creative process.
And just to put a fine point on it, it's not just writer's block. I genuinely had the feeling when I was trying to sit and write yesterday that I've had my last good idea. There's literally no more. I once was good at this, not anymore. So it's not just writer's block. It's this feeling of finality that I'm having trouble shaking. That like, nah, all the good ideas are gone. I'm just a hack, and I'm not producing anything good.
And it's like as a father, as a parent, you have that realization at some point that you've picked your kid up for the last time because they're too big.
Yeah. Oh, first of all, that caught me off guard. Yeah.
But it's like I didn't even realize it happened. But one day I picked my kid up for the last time, and you think, oh, what if my writing is like that? What if I had my last joke and I just didn't realize it, or I had the last good concept, the good writing session, the good idea, and of course, the other thing we're going to go back to now is that ideas are worthless. It's what you do with the idea. That's the kind of self-talk you now have to start going into. Is that number one? This is a confidence issue, which I feel very strongly about. And number two, it's not about the idea. It's about what you do with the idea. And then that takes it out of the framework of mystically having a good idea drop into your lap. And as a work person, taking that idea and applying 20 some years of experience, which you do have, to taking that idea and making it good. And that's something that no one can take away from you.
Well, so can we expand on this idea of inertia? Because maybe this would be helpful to me. So are you saying to me that I just have to commit to one and start drawing it?
Yes.
And that very act will in some way help shake this off? Because here's, just so folks know what I'm experiencing, is this is happening to me both on short form and on long form, which in the past, thankfully, hasn't happened. Usually if I'm suffering on short form, I'm like, oh, but I still got plenty of drive ideas. So or if drive is like floundering, I'm like, well, I've got plenty of Sheldon one-offs I could do in my mind. So, but this is happening. And that's why I know it's something deeper psychologically than just the idea itself, because it's happening to both of them at the same time. So it's definitely a confidence issue with change in my life, things going on in my broader life and personal emotions and all that sort of stuff. So because Sheldon, I have short form ideas, all of which I look at and I'm like, this is nothing. And drive, I know roughly what I need to do for this particular moment in this storyline. but I can't commit to either one. Like both of them feel lacking, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's got to be me. That's not the ideas. It's got to be my confidence in the ideas. So you're saying that I just need to maybe suffer through a mediocre one just to get moving again. Don't let the pen stop, basically.
Well, listen, I don't think that there's a one size fits all kind of cure for this. But it's the first place that I start is okay. So here's the deal. Here's what I know. Beyond any shadow of a doubt, is that when you lose forward momentum, you lose creativity, right? You know, when you get to that part,
can you expand on that? Expand on that.
You when you lose forward momentum, you get to that point where you say you've got 10 good Sheldons written down on a piece of paper, maybe hypothetically, right?
Yeah.
And you can't move forward on any of them. Then you lose creativity. Right. And then you lose confidence in your creative abilities.
Oh, I see.
So what you have to do is build that forward momentum again, start working forward and start allowing yourself little victories that will inevitably happen until you get that confidence again. It's almost like, remember those old cars it doesn't happen with today's automobiles quite so much, but sometimes a car would start and the best way to get it started again was to push it down a hill, and then you could get that
I
motor
owned that
to
car.
catch
Yeah,
again.
I remember. I had that 68 Oldsmobile. Yes, I remember that car.
That would be my first inclination of getting you moving in a direction again, just to get forward momentum going again, forward momentum. Because I'll tell you this, Dave, you're not alone. I've been going through the same thing just this past month with Evil Inc. And I know, and at some point I had to, I stared at it, and for me, it is absolute lack of confidence. I'm going someplace with this storyline that there's a lot of open air. There's a lot of chances for things to go not right. A lot of places that I haven't gone as a writer before. A lot of heavy storyline stuff where I've always been about the joke, the punchline, this. And over the past years, I've been changing that to more storyline driven with a humorous bent. And the bad thing about all the storylines is that sooner or later, they got to start resolving or else people get bored of you. So now I've got to start resolving storylines, and holy shit, that's a big task.
So that's I'm so glad you said that. You've nailed a part of what I'm feeling with Drive right now, which is I have 10 years of storylines, one of which needs to kind of start resolving. And it's I guess it's a form of fear that I want to land that plane. Because it's been 10 years of really successfully juggling plates with like 8 different storylines in Drive, and one of them has to start resolving, and I'm so afraid of breaking it rather than bringing it down safely, you know?
And there's a fear that you're going to do it wrong. What if I do it wrong after 10 years and I do something that is just horrible? And also there's this that's going on. It's a grief process for that storyline that is ended. That you've had for 10 years, and now it's not going to be there anymore because you're going to resolve it, and you need to resolve it. But also, wasn't it nice when it was around, because you could always dip back to the well and get new ideas from it. And of course, as a creative person, you got to know that when you bring this to a close, there's going to be another storyline. There's going to be another. It's not. It doesn't end here, but that's not what it's about for you as a creative person. It's a grief. You're grieving this thing that is going to come to a close in your life. And that is filled with all kinds of uncertainty and mixed emotions.
So you will know this better than I, but it is not unlike sending a kid off to college that you've raised for 18 years.
Yeah.
In that you know that this is the necessary next step, but you're a little bit sad that they're not in the house anymore, you know, and you're a little bit sad that those 18 years are gone. So okay, so let's isolate. So I'm currently in the midst of fear, insecurity, and what was the other one you had that was
you got fear,
confidence.
insecurity, and a lack of confidence, and grieving.
Grieving. So 4. I've got 4 emotions that and
those are all very creatively challenging. I don't want to say they're creativity killers, but they're a challenge. Let's face it. You need to conquer all of those to get back into a good creative space again.
Yeah, or at least two of them. I can usually power through
just a couple. Okay, so let's work on this theory. Let's see if once again, let's see if I'm full of shit or not. Because I'm willing to roll the dice.
Well, we know from the colonoscopy that you're not anymore.
Nothing. Not at all.
The well is tapped.
Those pictures were sparkly.
God, you know what? Honestly, just laughing again in terms of like, because I've been too much in the sun in a way, in that I've been too much sitting with myself as I'm trying to write. So maybe I should have just called you yesterday. Is what I should have done.
There was so many times I almost picked up the phone just to say I can't write this, and because it's not like, you know, that I expect you to know enough about all the working parts that you're going to say, oh, well, you need to have this character, you know, brush their teeth with a different toothpaste, and that's going to make everything turn out right. You know, right. But just to say, I'm not doing well. This is not good. Yeah. And just to have somebody, I picked up the phone so many times, I almost called you. Just to say it out loud, just to hear myself say it, because then it's almost like that whole idea of turning ideas into execution. Once you say it out loud, then it becomes a thing you can deal with. But before you do that, it's an interior thing that you can't get a handle on. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also
it probably would have helped.
Just naming the emotion, naming the mood, naming the moment is like you said, especially with a friend, it's the other person can sometimes take a view of 30,000 feet of like, okay, yes, this is why because you immediately narrowed it down. Like, my wonderful assistant of 6 years is leaving. That's a concern of mine because in an odd way that's weird to quantify. It's like, oh, I'm back on my own again. I'm back to the way I did it in my 20s, you know, and well, of course I could do it. I mean, I built the whole business by myself. I can do it again. It's just weird.
Can you do it? You're better prepared than ever to do it.
Yes. And I have way better tools than I had in my 20s and 30s. Like, yes, it's fine. But it's weird that it's akin to how no matter how old we all become, we are still a little bit the insecure high schooler that we were when we were 17 or 16, you know, and trying to figure out the world. I was hoping that
would go away someday, but it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah. So listen, let's do an experiment. I mean, kind of like we do on Writer's Room. We don't know how this is going to go, but if you're willing to do it, if you're willing to put yourself out there, give me one or two of those Sheldons that you think is bad. Give me one or two out of your sketchbook that you think this just isn't working, and let's take a look at it objectively and see if we can get your inertia going again.
So I wanted to do a joke about how, because, you know, right now all the streamers and networks are experiencing problems because in the pandemic, everybody was turning to streaming media and television for emotional support and escape because we literally couldn't go outside. But then now, 3 years later, everyone's dropping those services. And so they're all laying, you know, Amazon today laid off 9,000 people, Google, Apple. Anyway, Apple hasn't had layoffs. But anyway, what I want to do is I wanted to do a faux thing, like a faux setup talking about, hey, streamers, here's why we don't like your business model. But it's a misdirect because the actual joke is going to be, here's what we're really mad about. We're mad about when actors in a scene are holding a cup that has no goddamn liquid in it. And it drives me nuts because the physics of how you hold an empty cup are different. And a viewer can tell, when there's no liquid in a cup. And it's so like, why? I get it. The makeup is done. The outfit is done. You don't want to have an accidental spill on set. I get it.
Right.
But for someone, make a cup for television that has a half pound of weight in it so that it feels different than a cup that has, because you can tell when someone walks into a scene and they have no liquid in their cup. It just, they're way too flouncy with the cup. You know what I mean? And the way they tilt it to their face, the weight is not on the wrist in the right way. And you can tell as a viewer. So anyway, I wanted to do a joke about like, hey, streamers, here's what's wrong with your business model. But it's really, the joke is, for God's sakes, put a liquid in their cup because we can tell when there's no liquid in the cup.
Okay, so here's what's really upsetting about this is when you started telling your story, I had a whole plan where you'd get to the punchline and then I'd stare at you for several seconds and then try to convince you that you actually have lost your touch. Which would have been very funny for the show. I had it all planned out. I led you into the trap, and here's the problem. That's a great idea. That's a good idea. Here's the thing. It's going to take a little tweaking for the setup. And of course, you can't go into the physics of, I mean, you being a little bit of an engineer in your head, you're already figuring, same as me, you could just put something maybe filled with sand or something that would shift the weight inside that cup and it would solve the problem. But that's a very Sheldon idea, and you know how to set that misdirect up.
Do I? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that I
do. You know how to set that up. Netflix is failing, blah, blah, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that, including 1, 2, 3 valid reasons. But honest to God, let's be honest with ourselves. We both know it boils down to 4 misdirect out. You know that's how that joke sets up.
Yeah, that joke. You're right.
That's a very simple misdirect. You said it yourself in the first. You can make that work, and you know how to sell it with the visual. You know how to do that. By having actors, coming swinging, and you use the word flounce. That's what you draw. You draw a flounce.
Because everyone, you can it is flouncy. It's a flouncy moment when someone is holding, like on Friends, somebody was walking into the coffee shop and they had a paper cup of coffee. I don't know if it's Chandler or whatever, but he was being flouncy with it with his wrist. And I was like, God damn it, Chandler, just put something in that cup. I can tell that there's nothing in there.
Put some sand in there.
Yeah. You're right, though, that the idea of like a goo or something that can't fall out but gives you a little bit of emotion. Yeah. Now I want to design something for Hollywood because I want to talk to my wife about it. I was like, please never have an actor in one of your scenes with an empty cup because I can tell. Well, actually, I can tell.
Actually, I mean that might be a follow-up because there might be something funny in what you would put in the cup, whether it would be a gyroscope or some goo or some sand or a leprechaun.
A melted down Emmy or something.
Yeah, something, anything. But no, yep. I'm telling you.
Maybe that's the joke. The award for special effects goes to, I don't know, Tim Bibbins, the inventor of the cup that's empty but not empty, because God damn it, this has troubled us for 100 years.
Yeah. And they give him his Emmy award, and it's hollow, it's empty, and he's flouncing the Emmy around, or something like that. So here's the deal. I'm smelling confidence. I'm going to argue that you kind of know how to set that one up. You kind of do. And I'll tell you right now, it's a solid punchline. It's a classic misdirect. You can bring that one home. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Yeah. Let me hear the second one.
The second one was,
because I got another trap I want to lead you. I mean, let me hear the second one.
The second one was, it's this is like an 8-panel comic, which I don't tend to do very often, but it's going to be like, panel number 1 is, this is you. And I was going to draw a very iconic human, either all yellow or all blue, something like, I can think of like the IKEA man, that little, when the instructions for IKEA, that kind of, so this is you. Panel 2 would be, this is your paycheck. And then it would have 2 arrows. Top part is for you, but these numbers go to the government. That second part of your paycheck. These numbers go to the government. And then it would say, at the end of the year, the government already know, for the average person, the government already knows how much taxes you owe. They know what you've made, and they know as a salaried person, X amount of money. And so I say, for most countries, what they do is they generate a tax form, you sign it, bada bing, bada boom, you're done. Yeah. And then I was going to say, now I would like to introduce you to the 2 lobbyists for Intuit and H&R Block. And it's 2 same iconic looking humans, except they've got this slicked back hair, a gold chain, and they're wearing tracksuits. Yep. And one of them is going, "How you doing, pretty?" That kind of thing. And they're saying something like, these kind folks convinced your senators to make it so that you have to do the math. You have to gather the paperwork. You have to generate the forms. You have to do X, Y, Z. And they're like, and so the ultimate goal being you have to, not most of us, but I would say something like some of us have to hire Intuit or H&R Block or use their software. And then I wanted to have them go something like this. Well, what are you going to do? Remember what Franklin said, you're always going to have death and taxes. And then it would be back to the iconic human saying, yeah, but surely there's an easier way. And then the guy was just going to go, death or taxes, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, so there's a lot of ways you can go with that. I think you're already kind of feeling that it's a little bit long.
It's a little long,
I think you.
But the thing is, a lot of people don't know that other countries you don't have to do your taxes if you're an average salaried employee. I don't know why, by the way. This really bugs me, the lobbyists that got this passed and keep it passed. But the idea that other countries, you can literally just print out a form that the government's already generated for you, sign it, write the check, and you're done. That would blow most Americans' minds. They don't know that even is possible, you know?
Right.
And Intuit and H&R Block made that possible, where that is a reality in the U.S. So it does require a few panels of explanation, you know?
Yeah. And it's almost like, I mean, so what's a metaphor for what these guys are doing? In other words, like, this should be something that you get a bill.
It's a shakedown. It is. One of the reasons why I wanted to make them look like little mobsters is it's a shakedown for like, oh, it'd be a shame if someone were to mess up your pretty taxes. Sure, it would be nice if you could hire Intuit or H&R Block to fix this for you. When in fact, the government already knows how much you owe. You know, like that's the thing, is they already know. And
it's something that should be a bill. They send you the bill. You say, oh, this is how much I owe. You fill it out and you send it in. Instead, they're turning it into like a game show. Guess how much you owe. And by the way, if you're wrong, you're going to jail. You know?
So there's this threat about it. That's why I'm saying it's a shakedown game. Because everyone involved already knows how much you owe if you're an average salaried employee. And yet they make it this dangerous game that you've got to play. And so of course you're going to hire Intuit or H&R Block or an accountant or something. So anyway, that's another one that I know I'm 70% of the way there, but I don't feel confident about it. So anyway, and by the way, this is an example of what Brad and I do on our weekly Pro Tips. We sometimes do Writer's Room, where we will dissect and break down and rework the process of coming up with a joke and rewriting it. So for those who've never listened to Pro Tips, this is a tiny version of what we do on those episodes.
I think that's worth doing, and I'll tell you why. A couple of reasons. Number one, that's going to fall into it's funny because it's true. And we're heading right up into April 15th when this is going to be on everybody's minds. I would absolutely spend a little time working on that. And you may not get the kind of punchline that you usually kind of try to hit for Sheldon. Yeah. But if you go anywhere into the zone of it's funny because it's true, or it's recognizable, or I'm feeling anxious about the IRS too right now, or I'm feeling anxious about my taxes, any of those themes, you can post that on Reddit on the 15th, and I can almost assure you that it's going to get a whole lot of buzz. And it may not be the strongest punchline you've ever written, but it's going to do great on social media because it's going to be something everybody relates to. So that's got a lot of value no matter which way you go with it.
Yeah. And so here's what's interesting is that logically, and this is what we're talking about, logically, I know there is something to that joke. And I know it will do well on social media. And I know the timing is right. If I'm going to do it any time in the year, it's going to be in the next 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Logically, I know all that's true. Emotionally, there's a disconnect of anxiety and like, is it good enough? I don't know. And insecurity and all of that, I can try to parse with logic, but it is interesting that in terms of self-awareness, I know where this writer's block is coming from. Yeah. And it's coming from that mix of, like you said, grieving, anxiety, insecurity. And some of the, part of it is I've just got to, like you said, I've just got to power through that first one to get past this. But it feels, it's interesting when it happens. It hasn't happened to me in a couple of years this bad. But I know that it's happened to me before and somehow I got through it. I also remember it happening in a bad way when my kids were born. And that probably was also anxiety.
Anxiety and lack of sleep at that point, no doubt.
Lack of sleep, because you don't have the tools that you normally have to fix the problem.
But so here's the deal. It's very important to take a moment and listen to what you just said. Is this has happened before? It's not unusual. And every time you came back and started creating again. That's the other part of the sentence that you didn't say. This happened when I had kids. This happened before. It happened there. It happened there. But the part of the sentence that you didn't say is that, and then I got over it. And you did. You got over it, right? Yeah. So you will get over this too. We will be listening back to the show and laughing at it at some point. And the only way you're going to do it is to put ink to paper and start working on that next comic, even if it's not one that you feel particularly strong about. I feel strongly that you got to get that next comic out, and the sooner the better.
You're right. You're right. Here's the interesting wrinkle about being somewhat intelligent and somewhat well-read.
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to get past this, and I know that I'm going to create again, and I know it's going to be fine in the long run. But having been well-read, I know that there are people like J.D. Salinger that once the anxiety kicked in and once they had a lockup, they were not able to produce ever again in a public way, you know?
Yeah.
And granted, Salinger might have 8 unpublished books in that locker, and we'll find out about him someday. But the fact is, he stopped writing, you know? And so don't you have that when you get to this point too sometimes where once you lock up, you're like, well, shit, I guess this is my J.D. Salinger moment. I guess I had my one hit and that's it. I'm done now.
And that's when I need a good friend to take me by the hand and say, if that would have been you, this would have been over a long time ago. Right? J.D. Salinger would have stopped writing after his first kid, you know what I mean? If this would have been you would have known about it by now, but it's not you because you keep coming out on top of this. Because here's the thing. You don't have the same creative process as J.D. Salinger. You don't.
God, I hope not. That dude's a $3 bill in terms of weirdness, but yes.
Yeah. But here's the deal. You have had your own creative process. This has happened. The ebbs and flows have happened to you before.
Yes.
This is when a friend needs to take you by the hand and say, hey, snap out of it. This isn't you. You just need to get back to work, get back into doing things that are beneficial for you.
Yeah.
Again, get a couple of those small victories and then start building your forward momentum again. Yeah.
As far as the strategy goes, I think the phrase that you just used that's really correct is small victories.
Yeah.
Is that I'm not going to solve the world in a day with this. Is that what I need to do is probably just start putting pen to paper and like produce an eBay piece. Or, just start drawing just for fun for a little bit, maybe compose a funny email or two in terms of like just feeling like I can produce again, you're going to see a couple emails from me, Brad, where I'm trying to be clever. It's all part of the healing process. Nature is healing.
If it helps, you were very clever so far in the first half of the show. Very clever.
Good. And part of it is, is the recognition that we can be too much in our own brains in terms of it probably was not good for me that I spent the day yesterday isolated and trying to do this by myself. I should have just called you in the same way that if you're, by the way, we haven't even talked about you. I've made this all about me this first half hour.
Oh, I feel so much better about myself now.
Because right now you're like, well, thank God I'm not Dave.
Yeah,
Jeez Louise, he sounds like he's really going through a thing.
It's the same thing. And that's when it does help to have a friend you can reach out to and say, oh, I'm totally inside my head right now,
Yeah, that's a great phrase. I am too inside my head right now. And I'm too much. I'm also examining my examinations, which is like, what are you even doing here? You need to break this cycle and just start creating again. Yeah. So it's, by the way, we know from Brad's past writer's block episode, I don't know if for those that want to hear back, it was probably about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago.
Oh, probably 2 years ago. I'm sure.
We know that in about 2 to 3 weeks, you'll listen to a ComicLab and it's going to be this from me. Brad, I'm back. I had 5 great ideas this week and I'm writing off the storm because I know that it's like spring and fall. There are seasonalities to creativity in terms of the ebbs and flows and fallow land being productive land as well. So this will pass. But it's not a particularly fun moment in the moment. Anyway, so part of this is no one needs to email me with solutions or anything. I'm sharing this mainly to let you know that you are not alone in writer's block that might come at you sometimes too. I've been doing this for Sheldon for 25 years and Drive for 10 or 11 years now.
Yeah.
And it can still hit. And I know because I've interviewed them, it's hit some of my heroes after 40 years of cartooning. it comes for us all at different times. Anyway, Brad, I cut you off a little bit though. What were you
now
gonna say?
I'm going to wrap up this topic by saying this, and I do feel this very strongly. Here's the one thing I want you to keep in mind as you do whatever you need to do to get your forward momentum going again, is that every time I've really dealt with serious writer's block, every time I really struggled with it, I can look back and see that the work I did after that was leveled up in some way. Like I'd come back after that, and the work that I did after breaking through that, and sometimes it takes a while to break through. After I'd really broken through that, I was doing a little bit better quality work. In other words, I'm going to argue that writer's block and getting through writer's block is an important part, a necessary part of the creative process.
Right. Well, can I shoot? You were trying to wrap it up, but now you just generated a thought in me, and I just want to run this by you to see what you think.
Yeah.
Do you think? Okay, granted, I'm currently experiencing anxiety, insecurity, grief, and fear. Right? We went through that. That's what.
Yeah.
But could it also be that writer's block is, in some levels, part of that process that Ira Glass talked about, where your editorial eye is getting stronger than your abilities, and then your abilities get stronger than your editorial eye, and they ladder up one to the other?
Yeah.
Do you think that's partially what's happening? Is that a tiny bit my editorial eye has exceeded my creative hand, and so I'm trying to level up what I'm producing. My part of my creative process is trying to help the other part level up to the next level.
Right. Yeah, it very much could be. I'm not sure how you would prove that, like one way or the other.
Yeah, there's no way. Like you said, there's no way to prove that. Yeah,
but yeah, it's all of which to say it's somewhat of a help to realize that this one way or the other, whether it's this, that, or the next, this is a necessary. It's an important part of the creative process. It hurts. It's terrible. Yeah, but you do come out on the other side being better for it. Even let's say that my level up theory is wrong, and let's say that your editorial eye theory is wrong. I don't think that they are necessarily, but let's say they are. Let's clear them all out so we can talk about a level playing field. Coming out on the other side of writer's block is important, because it proves that you can do it. It proves that you've got and by the way, flipping over all the cards, you will come out of this writer's block. You know that deep down.
I actually do feel confident that I'll get past it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not. There's not. As much as I was joking about J.D. Salinger never writing again, I know that this too shall pass. But it's
if nothing else, just the realization when you do inevitably come out of it, that you look in the back mirror and see that you have come out of it. If there's nothing else, you get that out of this process, that you survived once again. Once again, the hitmen of life had you in their crosshairs, and you survived yet again. And being able to survive this creative process, if there's nothing else that you take from that, you get that as a consolation prize that makes a few of those sleepless nights worth it.
So in Northern California, there are sequoias, some of which I think the oldest one is over 2,000 years old. And every once in a while, they don't tend to log them anymore, thank God. But every once in a while, they either log one out of health reasons for their environment, or one falls over. Yeah. And they'll see some rings where, like, oh, in the year 500, it survived this massive fire. Or in the year 1580, there was a 2-year drought in Northern California, right? Something like that. And I know, because I've been doing this now for 25 years, that once I get past this writer's block, I'll look back and be like, oh, that's another fire ring, of my career. Oh, that's another drought ring. And so you do it long enough. And even as it's shitty in this moment, and even as I'm currently feeling the fear and insecurity and grief and all this stuff we talked about, I know that once I get past the other side of it, it will become one more ring in this, ever expanding tree trunk that the metaphor is breaking apart. But you know what I'm trying to say here.
Yes, I do.
Is that it's one more experiential thing in your career that we all go through from time to time. And anyway, thank you, Brad, for talking me through it as a friend. I really do appreciate it. I really, really do.
I am looking forward to seeing you on the other side of this thing so we can all laugh about it later.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Well, Brad, let's turn to really optimistic and fun news, actually, because we have a really fun update for everyone that's listening to the show that is a Patreon backer, something we've never done before. Brad and I, over the past week, with the help of Brad's wonderful family, did a really, really deep dive on turning a Nintendo Switch Joy-Con into a drawing remote. And the reason this came about is we had that wonderful interview with Scott Kurtz a few weeks back where he was talking about owning and using the CSP TabMate, which is a remote that CSP made specifically for use with CSP. It costs about $80. And I remember coming out of that interview going, gosh darn it, I'm a Photoshop user and I wish I had a cool remote like that. And unfortunately, I'm stuck with the giant, unwieldy, unusable Wacom remote. For the Wacom Pro, which, listen, I love my Wacom. I all day long, I will talk about how much I love my Wacom. That remote is terrible. It is the worst. It has no haptic feedback. There's no visuals. There's no physical intuition on where you are physically with your thumb on that remote. And it's also the size of a 1985 RCA remote.
It really is.
So unwieldy and unusable. So anyway. So Brad and I took some time this weekend and tried to incorporate a Nintendo Joy-Con as a remote.
Yeah, and luckily I had a little bit of help from my younger son Max, who is a Nintendo Switch expert, and had all, because in mapping this, what we had to do was download software that has been used to map Joy-Cons to desktop computers, but it's more for gamers, right? So we had to know what all these buttons meant. He knew it just by looking at it. And so we finally found a way. We went through several different softwares, many of which just straight up did not work. And we finally found a great way to map your Joy-Con to your Wacom, whether you're working in Clip Studio or in Photoshop. And we're going to be doing a deep dive. We're going to be devoting an entire ProTips episode coming up. Right now, it's scheduled to come out on April 11th. And we're going to be showing you exactly how we did it. So this is something you absolutely want to stay tuned for.
And accompanying that Pro Tips, we're also going to be sending out a PDF that will be posted with the Patreon. So you can follow along with the show and follow along the PDF. And hopefully, if we've done our job right, we will cut down a process that took us, 8 to 16 hours of experimentation, maybe, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, we got a little bit obsessed with it.
Yeah, hopefully down to 20 or 30 minutes. And I'm not joking about that. Hopefully it's a really quick setup process. And the idea being that you don't have to spend the $80. If you have a Joy-Con in your house, you can have it bada bing in minutes, or you can buy a used or open box one for $25. And you can use it with Photoshop. So there's a lot of people for whom this will be great for, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dave, let's go to one of our $5 Patreon questions from one of our community members and see if we can give somebody a little bit of help. This comes in from Angela, who says, hello, good fellows. I am curious if you have any advice on posting hybrid book style work. Okay, so this is something, Dave, that it's a comic for a little while and then it's prose for a little while. And then it's a comic and then it's prose. It kind of goes back and forth between comic and text. The problem, Angela says, is that the layout of the text and image is super important. So you just can't split out the text as the post. Would you duplicate the text in the post like a webcomic blog or Instagram? In other words, would you just post the comic in the visual part and then post the text in what would normally be the caption or of an Instagram post or the blog of a webcomic? Or would that leave much out of context? How do you deal with this, Dave? You've decided to go to something that's a hybrid between prose and comics. Now you've got to post it on social media. and you realize that it ain't so easy as you thought it would be. What do?
Well, so this, by the way, I'm the perfect person to help you with this, Angela, because unlike the first half of the show, I feel super confident in this answer. So I actually do this in Drive, where Drive has it's now been running for many hundreds of pages, and we're in year 10. But I also have found objects scattered throughout the comic, and most of those are text-based pages. So it's either a torn out page from a book or a novel from that period of history in the future, or it's an encyclopedia page, or it's a memo from a corporation that exists in the Drive universe, or an imperial edict that's been issued in the Drive universe. And so what I do is, to me, much like the way you're describing it, Angela, the layout and the look of those pages are super important, right? I'm trying to give you the feel of how would people in the 25th century be reading this document that I'm showing you. And so I reproduce the corporate memo, or I reproduce the page, the digital page of the encyclopedia, or the digital page of the novel, or the edict, or whatever it might be, so that you get the feel and the look. And it really is, I try to make it as immersive as possible. But here's the thing. A lot of times for really heavy reading, a JPEG or a PNG or a GIF does not work in terms of like really intensive reading of text, right? And I get that, especially if you're on certain devices or just depending on your vision, it can be really tricky. So what I also do, as you intuited, I also take the exact copy from that JPEG or that PNG or that GIF, and I reproduce it in that day's blog on WordPress down below the comic. And I make a little editor's note akin to how Marvel or DC would literally say back in the day, editor's note, refer to Amazing Spider-Man number 248 for more of this action, or, for a backstory of how the Beyonder came to meet Thor, that kind of thing. And so I'll do an editor's note on a specific image in that website that says, hey, a text-only version of this can be found below. So keep scrolling and you can read an easier text-only version. So that way they get the best of both worlds. They get the visual, which in book form and in terms of immersion is, to me, super important. But they also get the easier to read pure text that they can resize or increase contrast on their screen, whatever they need to do for their vision needs. And so that, I think, works for me. How about you, Brad? How would you handle this kind of problem?
Oh, I don't think I can improve upon that, to be honest with you. I mean, that's really what you are aiming for, is to get the best of both worlds. You want to have that to be able to be scrollable so that they do see that it's there. And a certain number of them are going to be able to read that text that you've converted into an image. And then the ones for whom it's difficult, having a note that says, here's where you can find that in traditional text is the icing on the cake. So I've got no problems with that whatsoever. And if this is the kind of comic that you've decided that you want to do, that this is the right delivery for the story that you want to tell, that it's got to be a little bit comic and it's got to be a little bit text, then this is something that you're going to need to do. As with every other creative decision that you make, whether it's this decision or that decision, deciding to go long form, shortcut form, there's 100 different creative decisions that you're going to make. Each one of them has consequences.
Yeah.
Every creative decision that you make has consequences. This is yet another consequence that once you've made that creative decision, you've got to figure out. And it's a great opportunity to use your creativity, right? There's depending on your specific story and how your story goes out, there might be a little derivation of what technique Dave was just talking about that might be an even better one for you. And since you made that decision and you have those consequences, you've got the delight of solving that creative problem, right? I think we can give you some broad stroke ideas, but obviously what Dave is saying is going to get you in the neighborhood, and then take it upon yourself as, hey, this is great. I've got a creative problem that I get to solve now.
Yeah, and is it extra work? Absolutely. Do I hate doing it every time? Absolutely. I can't imagine doing this for my entire comic. It would drive me bonkers. But the idea of copying and pasting and reformatting text so that it works in the flow of the blog below, it only happens once every couple of months. And so I do it when I can. And I guess if I'm being honest about it, it also maybe helps with SEO in terms of it's slightly more searchable than an image. I don't know whatever happened to Google. Google, for a hot second, we were contacted by engineers. Remember this, Brad, about a decade ago? Yeah. And they were like, we want to make comics searchable in our SEO abilities. And then they kind of never did it. They followed up with one or two of us, but then they never really did it. So I don't know what happened with that. But anyway, comics being fairly unhelpful in terms of SEO. It is maybe nice to have this text floating down below in the blog But let me ask you this, Brad, because this is an extension of Angela's question. I have a friend, I think it was Kate McCucci, who wanted to do an illustrated story, which is more story than illustration. Think more of a Shel Silverstein kind of a thing, right? Right. Where he would have his poems, and every third one would have an illustration on it. How would you recommend that maybe an author who illustrates rather than a cartoonist, or a cartoonist who wants to write but then have illustrations go with it? How would or should or could they present such a thing in a webcomic-y type format with recurring updates?
You know what I would do? I got to be honest with you. I would take a look at this more in the lines of a visual novel. Okay. In other words, and it would start to come away from the idea of a webcomic and into the idea of an interactive game, right? Which is more the idea of a visual novel. Okay. So it would be something that you'd have to set up a player, for lack of a better word, that you'd click a button and then the words would flow in the way they do and by the way, just think of any interactive text scene for a video game that you may have played. Where you get the illustration and then the little box comes up and it goes do and gives you all the text. And then once you've read it, you click on the button to get more text. And the image may change as a result, and it goes back
kind
and
of
forth
like how Pokemon games specifically do that a lot, where you have to sort of advance by hitting the buttons. Yeah.
And you can look up visual novels because there's a lot that are formatted exactly like this that do that. And so now it's coming a little bit away from a webcomic and going a little bit more into something that would be interactive media. But if I was giving somebody advice, that's exactly what I would do. And now the problem now is that, again, every creative problem has consequences that become a challenge. Now you've got to decide how to promote that and how to talk about that and how to publish that, which are three different things on social media. And then that's going to be another problem that you're going to have to solve, right? Because that thing that I just talked about is not going to be very easy to share on social media. Now you've got to solve that problem. But the unfortunate part is that's probably the best delivery system for the narrative that you have in mind, right? Because then you can control that type size, you can control the flow, the reader can control how quick it goes. It doesn't turn the page before they're done reading and all of that. So that interactivity that you've got is much, much better. Now you're going to have to make some interesting decisions on making that something that you can share on social media.
Can I tell you, I love it when your answer completely surprises me. And I genuinely would not have thought about sort of gamifying a text-based story that is also illustrated. Yeah. But what a delightful answer. You're right. That's a great way to do it. I did not think in a million years that was going to be the answer, but what a great way to do it. Also, because the older I get, the more I realize, and every teacher probably knows this intuitively, is that reading speed can vary greatly amongst our audiences. Like you think that everyone's reading about XYZ speed. Right. Some people are reading very slowly, and some people are speed readers. So the idea of giving the control in a kind of gamified way to your readers, that's really appealing. And then also, I'm immediately imagining a scenario where if this is an illustrated story, having the animated GIFs on either a manual reveal where if they're hitting the space bar to get more story, and then the fifth space bar hit reveals the image, or if the animated GIF is on a timer so that no matter where you are, about a minute in, it appears. That's a fun way to do it. Anyway, I just want to say thank you because I had not thought about this as a possible solution.
And you can do all kinds of fun interactive things with it at that point. There's a fun way to begin the story, and kind of give some a little bit of quick backstory. And at some point, they're going to get to that inevitable point at the end of the story where they're going to click a button and then they're going to hear a voice say that you've been listening to ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Oh my God, did you hear my laugh, by the way? That was like old man on a porch laugh. What was that?
Sounds like you've been doing about a pack a day, Dave.
Well, I tell you what, I've been sitting on this porch whittling this wood. I got to tell you, your hosts have been my friend Brad Geiger, who has a normal laugh, unlike me. He's the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my good friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the ComicLab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by the wonderful Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love ComicLab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. You may hear your review featured on a future episode. And by the way, if you're listening to us on Spotify, make sure you go over there and give us 5 stars over there too. Dave, I don't have a review to share with you as I typically do at this point, but this just came up on Twitter. I've got to share it. It's from one of our listeners who says, "Thank you, ComicLab Podcast, for reminding me." We were talking about using house ads and banner blindness. And I was saying, if you've got the same banner up there that you've had for 3 months, it's time to change it because your audience has gotten blind to that, right? Megan writes, "I refreshed the image that I used for my Patreon and I got 6 new patrons. Banner blindness is real," Megan says. So there's one of our listeners that put some of our actionable advice in. Got 6 new Patreon backers that day, or within a short period of time, I can only assume. So it's wonderful to see people getting some good use out of this advice that we're sharing, and I feel good about that.
As you should. It is legitimately wonderful. You know, every time someone joins us on Patreon, I send one of those video Bonjoro welcomes to them, you know?
Yeah.
And almost every time someone responds back like, oh, to me, it's the infectiousness of the joy among the helpfulness that we're genuinely enjoying. I mean, aside from this week when I was talking about writer's block, but the joy of creativity and the joy of talking about creativity with your friend and how much people are appreciating that. And so I just want to say thank you because it's been so nice to get that kind of word back. And so I will say ComicLab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/ComicLab. And of all weeks, this is the week that you want to join us because we're going to have that special breakdown and that in-depth episode about making a Joy-Con a drawing remote, which I have loved so far in this first week of using it. So I will say that twice, patreon.com/ComicLab. So Brad, you've gone through 8 years of medical school.
Yes.
You've gone through how many years of residency? 4, 5, 6 years of residency, right?
Yeah.
You've put well over a decade into becoming a doctor.
Yeah.
And every day that you go to work, you have to work with someone's keister, right? Like, so someone's made that. And listen, God bless them. Someone needs to do it. But I can't imagine how, you know, every day you come home from work, they're like, hey, how was work today? That's another shitty day. You know, another shitty day at work. Like, what? That's someone's lifeblood is to do that every day. It's like, well, I'm looking at a butthole again. Here we go.
And they're not, and let's face it, they're getting butts like mine, not particularly butts to write home about. These are not showcase butts. They're getting everyday butts. They're getting butts that have sit on bunches and buses and all the other places that butts sit. These are couch sitting butts. Yeah,
they're not getting the Ferrari of butts. They're getting the Honda Civic from 1985 that's on Craigslist of butts. That's what they're getting, you know?
Yeah, they're not getting the choice butts. They're getting everyday butts. And that's what they've got to make their career on. And I mean, I'm thankful that they do. By the way, they gave me pictures of the inside of my colon. No pictures of my butt. That was not photogenic. That was not newsworthy. They did not take any pictures there. Inside of my colon was much better from their standpoint.
The prize-winning interior. Yeah, you're like one of those real estate listings that has to say, "I'm gorgeous inside."
Yeah, a little bit of a fixer-upper.